Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to see so many. Rula Daood, Alon-Lee Green, you are both Israeli citizens. But Rula, you're Palestinian and you're Jewish.
Yes.
As Eva mentioned, both of you have leading roles in Standing Together, Israel's largest peace movement, established 10 years ago. I have a whole bunch of questions about your organization, of course, but I would like to start with October 7th. Rula, what's your strongest memory of that day?
Oh, God. I think it was waking up to the siren. I live in Jaffa, and I woke up at 6:30 after I thought I was dreaming of a siren. The first siren was as if I was dreaming, but the second one was real siren, and I woke up. And my partner kind of shook me. She was, "Wake up! There's a siren. Something is happening." And I didn't understand what was happening. Nobody really understood what was happening, because unfortunately, the place we come from, when there is a war, there is a build-up to that war. You know something is about to happen. But that morning, it was a shock, I think, to all of us. And that is the first memory that I have from that day. And from that point on, things just kept, deteriorating and going from one bad moment to a much worse moment. Yes.
What about you, Alon-Lee?
I just remember the feeling of this day, of how everything rolled and translated into something worse, how at the beginning it was understanding that something big is happening. We got sirens all across Israel. It was something very rare, something that never happened before. Then an hour and a bit after, we saw videos, petrifying videos, of residents in the southern city in Israel of Sderot, hiding in their balconies, holding their phones, at some jeeps with armed Palestinians with guns, hiding from them. Then we understood it's not just something big that happened. This is a moment that probably will change our lives forever. Then it moved into numbers. We understood that the casualties, the number of people hit by the massacre, by the attack of Hamas, are big and are growing. The numbers are huge. And then numbers became into names, and you started calling people you know. I had friends in the music festival in the south, and it was hours of trying to reach people. You get phone calls, but by people all around you, and you understand by the end of the day, nothing is going to be the same.
Rula, did you realize then, that day, what consequences it would lead to?
Yes, again, unfortunately. I knew that, my government, the Israeli government, will retaliate on the people, on my people in Gaza, but I didn't think it's going to be this big or that huge. If back then I didn't know it's going to be a war of 15 months. I was born into a family that it took my grandma so many years to speak about what she went through in 1948. And I never thought I was going to live something that has so much suffering in it, to be also shown on TV, on screens, and feeling as if, the world had stopped from caring or doing or helping. And I was living that moment for too many days, too many months, and a year, more than a year and a half. I would have never imagined I'm going to live any kind of, that kind of a moment in my whole life. So,
How would you say everyday life has changed for Palestinians in Israel?
It became harder for us. Palestinians we are 20% of, the people inside of the Israeli citizens who live inside of Israel, and we are a minority, and we are born with, these ideas from our parents that we are minorities, we should lay low, we can't be political, we can't be activists, we can't do anything because we live in a system where we are a minority, and it's very easy to, crush us down. And the 7th of October was, again, after it, there was, I think, 2, even 3 weeks. The first month after the 7th of October, there was a huge persecution from the Israeli government and police towards Palestinian citizens of Israel who would say anything about
What happened
the
to them?
attack. You had stories of students, of teachers, of doctors who worked their whole lives in hospitals, saving lives, who just dared to write on their Facebook, "May God have mercy on the kids in Gaza," or change their profile picture into a black picture because people were being killed on a daily basis in Gaza. They were fired from their work, fired from university. Even police came to their homes, took them, filmed them under an Israeli flag with a flanelite on their eyes, with their hands, being shackled.
Right.
Exactly. And that, video and pictures became so viral. And it was, intentionally, because they wanted us to know that you should know your place. You cannot speak about anything. You cannot speak about Gaza. And of course, you cannot criticize what the government, the retaliation of the Israeli government. So the fear was much more bigger. And if I would take it personally, I am political. I speak about politics. I go out in the streets. I have struggles. I'm not supposed to be afraid. And even if I am afraid, I'm not supposed to show it. But 2 weeks, even 3 weeks after the 7th of October, even I was so scared to speak.
Really?
Yes, it was very scary.
What about the Jewish population? What has changed for them?
I think it's important to understand that from the very, very, very first hours after the attack, after the massacre Hamas committed and was still ongoing, the messages that we heard from the Israeli politicians, from ministers, people that are holding real power, was messages of basically losing our humanity, telling us there are no innocent people in Gaza, saying sentences like we're going to bring back Gaza to the Stone Age, we're going to flatten Gaza, no food will get in, no water, no running gas or supplies. We heard sentences about the children in Gaza, and this is a real quote, it's horrifying, but there are no innocent children in Gaza because the children of today are the terrorists of tomorrow, and the children that we didn't kill in 2014, the previous war, are the ones that committed the massacre now in October 7th, 2023. And I think that these trends, very dangerous and dark trends that started from the top in Israel, they trickle down. And they trickle down in a way that it is really, really tough to think about the things that we are allowing ourselves to lose. Not only because the way we treat the Palestinians in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, and we mustn't forget that 20% of the citizens in Israel are Palestinians. They are part of the Palestinian people, even if some politicians will call them Israeli Arabs. They are part of the Palestinian people, and it is dangerous to speak about them, but it is also dangerous because the question of what kind of a society we are. We will need to live in Israel after this war. We will need to live with ourselves. We will need to live in a society that is good for women, good to the children that live there today. Losing our humanity, allowing ourselves to cross those red lines and saying horrifying things and believing that no people there are innocent, this is something that is not only dangerous to the Palestinians, it is dangerous to the Israelis as well.
Now let's go back to 2015. How did your organization, Standing Together, come about?
Well, Standing Together began, again, it was after a war on Gaza, the 2014 war, and it was a year where there was so much violence within the streets of Israel. It was called also the Intifada of the Knives. There were many Palestinians coming inside of Israel and stabbing soldiers and people, and again, hatred and violence was initiated between the people living inside of Israel. So a bunch of activists, both Jews and Palestinians, said enough is enough. We need somebody to speak a different language, and we need to claim what's really ours.
You met in a demonstration, right?
We met in a demonstration, yes.
What was it about? What you just mentioned?
Nation-state law, right?
It was, well, yes, it was nation-state law, but that was in 2017. But Standing Together began as a voice of activists who believe that the majority of the people living in Israel and Palestine want the same things. And it's not we disagree on what are the things that we need, which is peace, economic justice, social justice. It is just that we don't have the right politicians or the right path or ideology to take us into a place where we can have real safety.
Why didn't you join any of the old peace movements? Because they are those also, aren't they?
We do have a lot of respects to the entire ecosystem around us. Some of the NGOs are doing very good work in exposing what is going in the West Bank. Some of the NGOs are using legal work to try and help Palestinians to get their house not demolished by the Israeli army. A lot of the NGOs are trying to build knowledge among Israeli Jews about the past attempts for peace. Our role in this ecosystem is to organize the Israeli public, Palestinians and Jews, and to mobilize people.
Were you the first to do that? Had that happened before in the peace movement?
It happened until the 90s, and it stopped at the 90s. We're talking about generations in Israel, young people that, if you're below 30 today in Israel, the only thing you know is Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister. You do not know any kind of a different government, different politics. You do not have a memory of an Israeli leader shaking the hands of a Palestinian leader. Something that Rula and me, being a little bit older than 30, we know. I remember that in the Oslo days when, in 95, there was a day that in my school they told us to wear white shirts because Rabin shook the hand of Arafat, and it was a day to celebrate. And schools all across Israel celebrated the day, that it was good. It was an amazing thing to see leaders from both sides of a very violent conflict coming together and shaking hands in the direction of an agreement. Today, no one remembers that.
Yeah. So what was your goal when you started to establish Standing Together?
Our goal was to build a political will and a political power within the society that we live in, to demand and to reach for a real social justice, for real equality, for real ending of the occupation, and seeking true Israeli-Palestinian peace. And it comes because we've seen that the last 20 years, grassroots movement didn't really exist in a strong way within our society. And we believe that one of the main things that we can do is put pressure, is have campaigns, is go out to the streets, convince people with us, and then put pressure on politicians to act in a different way. And that was something that was very much lacking from the Israeli society.
So what did you do there in the beginning? What kind of methods did you use? Or?
At the beginning of Standing Together, the first 2 years, it was only about mobilizing people in the streets. Just going out in demonstrations, demanding end the occupation, demanding real peace, end of the siege on Gaza, but not just that. Going also to issues that concern the daily lives of people. Raising the minimum wage, ending the, violence within, especially the Palestinian society inside of Israel, economic justice, social justice. We had so many fights in 2 years that we mobilized people around them because we believe that there are many issues that affect the lives of different people who live within Israeli society. And if we can take one issue and struggle it with other people, we can bring various peoples from our society into one struggle. And with that, we can really shape something different from within the Israeli society. But that's just mobilizing people. After doing that, we understood that in every demonstration, thousands of people came with us. But then, we didn't offer them anything after. So they just went back home and they didn't do anything. So we understood that we also need to organize people. And we started learning about community organizing, which is something we didn't really learn. And by learning about community organizing, while taking people to the streets with us, we absorb them into the movement. We take them into more events that can be done in order to strengthen also the relationships between people and to grow as a movement. And that was the main thing we did until the 7th of October and even after the 7th of October. But being able to mobilize and organize people within our society made us a stronger grassroots movement.
Did you advocate for a two-state solution, or how far do you go?
So we let's put things straight. In the land of Palestine/Israel, you can call it the way you want. There are two people that live on. There are roughly 7 million Palestinians living next to 7 million Jewish people. Palestinians call this land their homeland. The Jews call this land their homeland. And the fact is, no one is going anywhere. Yeah. Despite the fantasies of the extreme right in Israel to see Palestinians packing and leaving, they're not going anywhere. Despite the fantasies of Hamas to see Jewish Israelis leaving or coming back to Europe, I've been called a lot to go back to Europe, even though my family is not even from Europe. We're not going anywhere. And on this land, there's only one possible solution to solve the violence, to solve the daily oppression, to solve the fact that so many people feel unsafe, unfree in their homeland, and it is a peace of equality, independence, and freedom to all the people on the land. If those three things will not exist, if all people will not be free, independent, and equal, we will just find ourselves in endless violence. So we support this kind of a peace. Yes, it must go through an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. This is the demand of Palestinians living in the occupied territories, and we support this demand. It means we need to see negotiations for the end of the occupation. And when I say occupation, I mean millions of people, Palestinians, living under the military control of the Israeli state without being the citizens of Israel. That means they do not have civil rights. They're not the citizens of any country of the world. They do not have human rights. They do not have the right to move freely. They do not have the right to work where they want. They have so many obligations that are upon them as people without a country, without independence and freedom. So we support this solution: freedom, independence, and equality to all the people on this land.
One state.
I don't think it's a one state what I describe. I think it means that we need to fulfill the right of the Palestinians.
Two states.
It's a two states, yes, and I do believe there's no way to bypass it. I wish, personally, to even see a socialist federation of the Middle East. I think this is the best solution, right? All people free with the most pink possible future. I do not believe, personally, that if you take the national majority in Palestine of Palestinians demanding independence and the right to self-determination, and then you take the Jewish national majority in Israel of Jews demanding the right to self-determination, putting those two majorities under the same roof right now with the bloodshed is just a recipe for more bloodshed. And thank you, we have enough from that. So fantasies aside, which I support a lot of good fantasies, I'm an ideological person, as you heard, socialism in the Middle East, best solution. But after that, we need to be pragmatic. Being pragmatic meaning to end, first of all, the occupation, end the war on Gaza, and moving to an Israeli-Palestinian peace. If someone will think that this solution is possible without the Palestinians, going to Saudi Arabia, begging for peace with people that we don't have an actual war with, they are delusional. But if someone also will say that this peace is possible without the Israelis living on the land, they are delusional as well. We need to come to political agreements, and this is, and mark my words, this is really the only possible solution.
Okay. What happened to standing together after October 7th?
We grew as a movement. I can talk about the bad things, but I prefer talking about the good things.
But let's start from the beginning.
You will talk. Well,
because I guess that your organization didn't have such an easy time.
No, we didn't.
After October 7th.
No, we didn't.
Please tell me. Please start there, and then we go on.
So the 7th of October, the day itself, everybody being shocked, not understanding what was happening, getting the news from social media and not from the government or even, any mainstream media from within Israel, made people more anxious, more afraid. Hatred began climbing.
Did you receive hatred? Did you and you?
We
Daily.
We agreed to not speak about that because we wanted to always speak about what we were able to do. But now we are 16 months after the 7th of October, and yes, we were, 2 days after the 7th of October, we declared and we said, We know what's going to happen if this war does not stop. And the only solution, the only thing to do right now is to have a hostage deal, to go into a deal 2 days after. And many people, organizations, partners even, thought we were delusional. They said, this is not the time to speak like this. It's not. People are in pain. They are hurting. You should not be speaking about that. But we know, and we know what was about to come. Of course, we didn't imagine 15 months of total destruction, but we did not back down. We knew that if this politics of our government does not stop, only more suffering will be happening. So we went out and we demanded a deal. We went out and we demanded a ceasefire. We went out and we said a stop to this war, even when other people did not really agree, and it wasn't the majority of the people in Israel demanding it. And by doing that, yes, we received a lot of threats to our lives, to the offices.
I also wonder, because standing together is like you are, Jews and Palestinians, and you are only human beings. After October 7th, could you avoid confrontations in your organization? What happened?
At the beginning, I would say the first 2 or even 3 months, some people did not agree with us. They said it's too painful to demand something else right now that is not revenge. It was too painful for too many people. And some people, few people, didn't find themselves, the path within standing together. But for us, we understood that we needed to stand together, to hold it together. And the first act that we did 3 days after the 7th of October is to have a talk with our leadership, with our staff, and to enable people to speak of what they think, of their feelings. And we had a Zoom talk because we were not able to leave our homes because there were sirens and bombing for the whole 2 months after the 7th of October. And in that Zoom talk, people just cried. That's the only thing we did. And it made us understand that even if in this place, in standing together, that has both Jews and Palestinians working together, we had a lot of pain. But we also understood that this pain was mutual and the fear was mutual. So we wanted to take what we've done with our leadership to different other parts inside of Israel. So people can have a mutual place where they can also speak. And we started our solidarity conventions a month after. The first one we held in Jaffa, there were sirens, 400 people came. The second one we held in Haifa, and the municipality did not like it that we were, some Jews and Palestinians meeting and speaking about their pain and against the war and demanding a hostage deal. So they didn't want to give us a place. So the mosque opened its doors. And we had 1,000 people, both Jews and Palestinians, in a mosque. And it just kept on going from one city to another city. Mixed cities, Jewish cities, Palestinian cities. And thousands of people came with us. And it enabled us to get from, a very good start because people understood that what was happening was mutual to all of us. And we need to put a stop to it. So that was, the beginning of how we try to handle it. But at the same time, holding our politics and not being afraid of saying that this government is a right-wing fascist government. It speaks about killing innocent people, conquering more land, conquering Lebanon and Syria and maybe Jordan someday. And this is not what will bring us safety or peace. And we need to go into a different direction that can give us safety on this land, which is stopping the war, a ceasefire, and today, yes, going into peace, a real Israeli-Palestinian peace. And that's what we did, we're still doing. And since that moment, standing together has only become bigger. Today, we are the largest grassroots movement inside of Israel. We have 12 chapters, 14 student chapters, which is the strongest organized student force in campuses. And we are I think we are number 1 on social media as a political movement inside of Israel, which means we reach tens of thousands of people on a daily basis.
And how did you change your actions and your work after October 7th?
We had to move very quickly into emergency capacity, responding. One of the as I said before, one of the strongest themes of the Israeli government after October 7th. And I want to make maybe something clear. We are Israeli citizens. We take responsibility within our society. We have a lot what we think about Hamas, what we think about the Americans, a lot of things we have in our minds, but the responsibility we take is within our society to influence our politics and to change our own path. And one of the things that we were led to by the Israeli government was this campaign of starvation of the people in Gaza. They started by saying no one is innocent there, and between October 7th and March, no food, no aid got into Gaza, and we started seeing a lot of stories about famine, about starvation in Gaza. And the first stage of what we did in this campaign was to say, no, we cannot allow starvation in Gaza, not in our name, not because of our safety, because it will not allow us to be safe, it will not give anything to anyone. We started to leading convoys of private cars of our members filled with food, trying to reach the border of Gaza, saying we demand to bring it into Gaza. Of course, we were stopped by the police, by the army. By the way, in the same time, settlers were allowed to get to the border of Gaza and to demand to build settlements there. Afterwards, on March, when the US administration and some governments in Europe started to demand from Israel to bring in food to Gaza, the settlers organized in their settlements in the West Bank to block the aid convoys into Gaza. You probably saw the videos. It started by blocking the roads. It quickly deteriorated into setting trucks on fire, looting them, spilling rice and flour to the floor. The police got an order from the Minister of Police, Ben Gvir, the most extreme politician in our country, not to arrest, not to interfere, to allow the settlers to do what they want. When this started to deteriorate, we called upon our members to join a new humanitarian guard we built, and we went there on daily shifts, 2 shifts a day, and we stood between the settlers and the aid trucks, protecting the aid trucks, not allowing the settlers to get into the aid trucks, holding our bodies, and in the beginning, thank you. And at the beginning, it was violent. We saw 14 years old girls, settlers, holding knives in front of us, trying to slash the tires or to tore some sacks of rice. After a week, the police started to come, not because the settlers attacked the Palestinian trucks, but it was Israeli citizens on one side and other Israeli citizens on the other side, and we were clashing, so they came to separate us. 3 weeks in, they were there already in the morning, the police. And within 6 weeks, they didn't allow them to go on the street. They didn't allow us to go on the street. We stood in both sides, and the police made way to the aid trucks. And since May 27th, all the aid trucks were safely passing into Gaza, not one stopped by settlers, and that's a win for us. That's a real win of us trying to change reality. And we'll just, thank you. Just one last thing about it is that our work didn't end there. We said, after a few weeks, we saw that aid is getting into Gaza. We said, you know, to the Israeli citizen, it is not just starvation that happens on the same land we live on. Those are not just people that share the land with us. It is starvation that is happening by us, by our government. So we called upon the Israeli citizens to join a huge journey from north to south, full month, of donating and collecting aid into Gaza from Israeli citizens in Israeli supermarkets. It became the largest donation campaign in the history of Israel, collecting 400 trucks. Huge campaign in the Palestinian society in Israel, and it brought us tears to see that in Gaza, up until today, there are people in purple vests, partners of Standing Together, distributing food with Israeli Hebrew title, bought in Israeli supermarkets, to families in tents in the rubble. It is not something that ended the war. It is not something that, you know, created enough, but it was something that we were able to do in such a horrible reality, and we're proud to be able to do something.
Some people and some Swedish politicians, among others, argue that the Hamas attack did not happen out of thin air. History plays a role here. What do you say to that?
I think, yeah. We are so unfortunate to live in a place where there is so much history and we never learn from that history. That is what I would say. Yes, there is occupation on the West Bank. Yes, the lives of millions of Palestinians are controlled daily by Israeli military. Yes, there is a siege on Gaza. All of these things are true. But my liberation and my people's liberation is not taken by killing innocent people. This is how I see it. To kill and to be killed is not fate to all of us. It's politics between two leaderships that are not really wanted by the people. Before the 7th of October, there was a poll done in Gaza, and it asked the people, do you think that Hamas is the representative of you in Gaza? Because there were no elections held in Gaza after Hamas took control. More than 72% of the people said, no, Hamas is not the leadership that we want. In Israel, before the 7th of October, we were demonstrating for 2 years in the streets, demanding to change the government that is led by Bibi Netanyahu, which means the majority of the people on both sides did not want its leadership. And then the 7th of October happened. And these two leadership are still exploiting the pain of the people living on the land for their own benefit. And it's time that this stop. And this can stop only when people living in Israel, Palestine understand that we are the only ones that can save ourselves from these leaderships. But it can also happen when we have the international community, when we have politicians from abroad putting pressure on our governments to make them decide to take a different road, which is not the one of killing more innocent people, of conquering more land, of dreaming that maybe 2.2 million Palestinians will leave Gaza and this will solve everything. This is not a solution for us. The real solution is to have courageous leadership to lead us into a place where we can have real safety in the land that we live in. Because if this thing does not change, unfortunately, in the next years, we will still have another war, and another war, and another war, and more thousands and tens of thousands of people will be killed again. So we need a change.
What do you say, Alon-Lee, about this trying to understand what happened when you look at the history, and it's understandable to a certain...
I think that what happened in October 7th cannot be justified by any way. I think killing innocent people in their beds, kidnapping babies, it's not something that can be justified in any struggle, whatever the cause is. I think that as much as we learn what is the history and we try to change history, it is not something we can allow ourselves to lose the justice in the struggle for justice. And I do think after understanding that we can inflict a lot of pain to each other, that we can create maybe even mutual destruction, after understanding that and condemning that and saying that I know how terrible it is, we choose to look to the future right now. And we choose to look to the future because we do understand that we hit this historic junction. What happened before October 7th, the status quo, is not maintainable. We cannot continue to do the same and expect different results. We cannot somehow manage the occupation, manage the conflict. We cannot justify what people do in this, but we can also be smart enough to understand that as long as we continue this reality, we will not be safe. So our look towards the future is a look of both solidarity. Yes, we are not ashamed, I am not ashamed as a Jewish person to say that I am standing in full solidarity with the Palestinian people and for freedom to the Palestinians. I'm not ashamed, I support it. But at the same time, it means necessarily that I'm also standing for my self-interest, because my fate is intertwined at this moment with the fate of the Palestinians. We live on the same land, and if Palestinians will not have freedom, we will not have safety. If we will not have safety, they will not have freedom. Right now, this is the only focus we need to have. Ending this war with a hostage deal, understanding that this hostage deal is the only way to release the remaining 73 hostages that are now in Gaza. People can, mumble themselves until tomorrow, saying that only military pressure will release the hostages. That is a lie. The military pressure killed more hostages than it released. And that needs to be obvious. Only the hostage deal will release them and will allow us to move forward to a place with no more war and killing and sorrow and grief.
But you do have critics, and one of the harshest critics is the Palestinian-led organization BDS Movement. And according to them, and I quote, standing together seeks to whitewash Israel's genocide in Gaza. How do you respond to that?
I do want to say some things that I may go to jail if I say them in Israel, but still. I do believe that at times of war, one of the tactics people can use is to boycott. Yes, it is a tactic. Should people be boycotting settlements? Yes, they should.
Because that's what BDS wants.
Yes. Should people be boycotting ministers who speak of genocidal ambitions in Gaza? Yes, people should. Should people be boycotting, factories who give more guns and weapons to the Israeli army in order to bomb Gaza and to kill more innocent people? Yes, people should. But should people be boycotting the only movement that is waking up each and every day, doing and acting in order to stop this war, to end the occupation, to have real freedom and real independence for the Palestinian people? No, you shouldn't. There is a huge difference between boycotting governments, evil governments, ones that speak of conquering more land, than in boycotting societies and people that wake up despite everything that can be put for us in the land that we come from, and we work each and every day against this government, which is our government. So I think to be clever is also to understand what should we be supporting. And this is a movement people should be supporting.
But what's your position? Is Israel guilty of genocide in Gaza? Yeah.
Listen, what I know, and I know for a fact, is that we have ministers that are using the most genocidal terminology, saying wipe them all, no innocent people in Gaza, we get there and flatten everything. Am I a person of, professor of law? I'm not. I know that enough people were killed in Gaza.
Amnesty International claims it's a genocide.
It is not for me to decide what it is. I do operate within my society, saying that so many people, so many innocent people, and we're talking about 50,000 declared, almost 50,000 declared deaths, 17,000 of them are children. I do not want to be part of a society that lives well or is responsible for the death of 17,000
No, but the term genocide.
And that's where I'm coming from. I am, as I said, operating within the Israeli society. And our responsibility that we take upon ourselves is to create change from within the Israeli society. When people come to us and condemn us for not using the words they want us to use, or to use the specific terminology, when they ask us, but what is your statement about? Or why didn't you use this word or that word? They do not understand the very basic operation or the very basic attempt of us to not come to symbolism, to not come to terminology, but to create change within a society that is in a very, very critical and dangerous and dark point. So wait, if you want to hold us to the question of saying words matter more than actions, I will tell you that you're wrong. If you understand that the change we want to create is more important than condemnation, I think that we are in the side of trying to operate in a very tough conditions And I think it is understood enough what I'm saying to say that, for example, when Rula said it is not legal, there is a law in Israel that if you call to boycott products that are tested on animals, it is okay. If you say don't buy from this company because they hurt the environment, it is okay. But if you say don't buy this product because it is being produced in settlements, you sit 1 year in jail. This is the conditions we work in Israel. You want to fight these conditions? You want to tell us that we need to leave Israel and go to a different place and ignore the condition we work? So good luck with that. But we choose to take upon ourselves the tough responsibility of working within our society because we believe this is the strategy with the 2 people living in this land to end the occupation and to achieve peace and to end the misery of 14 million people living on this land.
So what you're saying is that when it comes to the term genocide, it's a point in being diplomatic.
It's a point of trying to convince people and asking, who are the people you're trying to convince? I'm sorry, but we're not here to entertain people that live somewhere else. We're here to speak about the work we're doing, and there are reasons we're meeting with parliament members, with people from the government and other organizations here. We're trying to represent the work that we're doing. Entertaining people that want us to use symbolism or specific terminology is not what we do.
Okay. I hear you. Let's talk about the situation right now. Do you think the ceasefire will hold?
We hope so. We go out each and every Saturday, Friday, Thursday, and each and every day in the week, demanding and taking more people with us into the street so we can get to the second stage of this deal. But not just the second stage of this deal, but to have a real ceasefire, and from that point to go into a real political agreement that will also lead us to a real Israeli-Palestinian peace. We see the politicians and what they are doing. We see what Bibi Netanyahu is doing, and we understand that the alliance, the Bibi-Trump alliance, is becoming so strong, and we are also afraid of it because we see what these lunatic people in power think of and want to do. But we still believe that the same way we were able to go out into the streets for 15 months to hold demonstrations, to hold campaigns in the streets, and to shift public opinion within our society from a place where people did not want a ceasefire to a place where the majority of the Israeli society demanded a ceasefire, and then a majority demanded an end to this war. If we do have the power, we can still go out into the streets, we can get to a place where we can see this ceasefire really holding. And I do think right now in politics, what people see is that a ceasefire is ending the suffering and bringing people, the hostages, back home alive. And when people see other people coming back home alive, it gives them hope. And they understand that military solutions are not solutions. The things that saved lives of people were diplomatic agreements. Yes, a hostage deal. So yeah, this is what we are pushing towards right now.
But how do you see the risk of the war starts again in Gaza when all the hostages are released?
Well, it is a possibility on each and every day right now. The government that we have, Bibi Netanyahu, he's not really concerned about the lives of the hostages. Of course, not about the lives of the Palestinians, but also not about the lives of the hostages. All about politics for him. And this is the point where I think that international pressure is much needed. We do what we do back home because we know that we need to organize and mobilize people towards different solutions. But we also need the help of people from here, the EU, because you do have the power. You are the only standing power right now in the face of Trump, who has lunatic messianic ideas of the Middle East, and not just the Middle East. And pressure from here can also put brakes for these politicians on what concerns our lives. And pressure from here can really bring different politics for what concerns Israel and Palestine, and can take us to the second stage of this deal, but to also to have a real ceasefire and to continue from there to other political agreements.
And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Donald Trump shocked the world by suggesting that the US will take over Gaza, and Netanyahu likes the idea. What does that mean for this process with the ceasefire?
Well, when they had their press conference together, when Netanyahu visited the White House, it was a moment where the entire political system, from the center to the right, including parts of the center left in Israel, rejoiced. Say, wow, here is the magic solution no one thought of before. And now, after 16 months of nightmare, here, all the Palestinians will just disappear and we will have, a solution, safety. And of course, no one spoke of something else in this past following week, which is the hostages, the hostage deal. I think that we need to read it like this. Not only that it is a real threat and danger to deteriorate the situation and to create more violence, because this is what trying to remove people from their homeland. Think, if you can think of one people on the face of the earth that will peacefully leave their home, will you in Sweden say, okay, Trump says we need to leave. Maybe in Denmark they have more experience with that. But we need to leave our homeland. We will live peacefully and without resistance. No, it will create violence. But the other way we need to see it is that this is the way of the right wing to overwrite and to remove the agenda of agreements with the Palestinians, of ending this war, ending the misery, ending the killing, ending the destruction, and releasing the hostages. And no one spoke of the hostages back then. And I do believe that, the right wing in Israel is not happy about the ceasefire. We hear them say again and again and again that they need to find a way not to move from the first phase to the second phase of the ceasefire, not to make it permanent. And this is the best way to remove this.
But is it a realistic idea that the US take over Gaza?
I think this is the part of the plan no one speaks of in Israel, but the part of removing Palestinians from the land is, yesterday we saw all of a sudden a title in all of the news that the Minister of Defense launched a committee in the Ministry of Defense and the Army to start moving forward the concrete plans of forcefully or voluntarily, so voluntarily that you have a gun to your head and you volunteer to do something, to voluntarily remove people from Gaza.
To where?
No state in the world said yes. I hope no other state or country in the world will say yes, we're agreed to do that. But I do want to be clear. None of us is against the idea that if a family in Gaza wants to say we want to move to Canada, they will not be allowed to move to Canada. We are all for free will, for the ability of every person in the world to choose where they want to live. And if we want to get into details, if you ask why people today in Gaza that want to live out of Gaza cannot do that, it is because Israel is not allowing them. This is how absurd it is. We're not allowing now people to leave Gaza. Even sick children that need, to get cancer treatment in Romania that agrees to accept them, they're not allowed to leave because Netanyahu doesn't allow them. But now, everyone should willingly leave. This is not pragmatic, and we don't support this kind of ideas.
Rula, it's unbelievable that we speak about this suggestion because it's so, you can't believe it. But what does your friends say, your people, about this suggestion from Trump and Netanyahu?
Well, we Palestinians, we have a word, we say sumud, which is resilience. We stay, we never leave. This is one of the things that we have in our culture. And if Trump thinks that 2.2 million people will just pack up and go somewhere else, he's wrong. Because these people who live in Gaza, those Palestinians, used to live in Ramle, in Lid, in Jerusalem, in Nazareth, in all of the places that right now they are not living in. So to think that people that have so much trauma that they had to leave their homes, not just once, not just twice, but 3 and 4 times would leave their homes now, he's just, having these fantasies. People, my grandma, who lived through 1948, when the war between Israel and Hezbollah now started, she is 91 years old. When the war started, she lives on the border with Lebanon, and the missiles start coming from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. And I told her, Grandma, come to my home. It's in Jaffa. We don't have a war back there. You leave your home. She said, I left my house once. I will never do it again. So this is how people in Gaza think, no matter how many terrible things will happen, people will not leave because they have already left once and twice and they've lost so much. I don't think the idea or anybody is really opening the doors to have 2.2 million Palestinian refugees. Of course not Arab countries, of course not Egypt, not anyone else. It is just a fascist idea by politicians to make us forget about the situation and about what is the real problem and to talk about the solutions. This is their way of making us look at things that do not really concern us. What we should be demanding again and again and again is an end to this war, a solution to all of us that will start by declaring an independent Palestinian state next to Israel, freedom, liberty, and yes, equality to all of the people living in Israel, Palestine.
Alon-Lee, I've heard you say that standing together is fighting a war of the soul of our society. What do you mean?
I think that maybe it's tough to see, but from afar. But we have a society. Israel is not just a flat thing of settlements, Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, occupation. We have real people living in our society. You needed to experience October 7th and the weeks and months to follow to understand the level of solidarity also existing in our society. You know that in our hospital and health system, 40% of all the workers, nurses, doctors, paramedical workers, 40% of them are Palestinian citizens of Israel, even though Palestinian citizens of Israel are only 20% of the society. Think of the crazy, crazy situation of wounded soldiers coming back from Gaza to a hospital and then treated by a surgeon that is Palestinian. Think of a Jewish child going to learn in a school where his teacher is Palestinian. We live in a society that is so complex, but has so good also inside of it. And it's tough to see, and I know. But I think we should believe in our society, believe in the good of people, and also believe in a very, very strong power. And I want you to imagine a mother, a real mother in Israel, a Jewish mother sitting next to her phone, knowing that her son is in Gaza right now, as a soldier. You may say, in one angle, that her son is committing the very bad things the IDF is committing in Gaza. You may be, right. But also, if she sits next to her phone and she's petrified to get the worst phone call of her life announcing that her son died in Gaza, this is a real power of change. Because everyone wants their children to live. Everyone wants their families to be safe. And we have this interest within the Israeli society. We are trying to harvest this interest. The interest to be normal, the interest to have a future, the interest to be a part of a generation that not only thinks about immigrating out of Israel, because who thinks there's a future in Israel when this is the politicians, this is the war, this is the killing we're responsible for? No, we want to have a future. And I think that this is the fight we're conducting. It is a fight over the soul of our society. Whether we can imagine that this is going to be the place we're raising our children, whether we are imagine that we can see the trauma that we suffer and say, no, we're not going to lose our humanity in the face of this trauma. We're going to insist over what kind of a society we are. And I think it is not only a war for the sake of others, it's a war for the sake of ourselves.
And what does it take to reach that future you talk about? Will Benjamin Netanyahu, can he be a part of it?
I think the leadership of Israel, of Ben Gvir and Smotrich and Netanyahu, people that care only about a small minority that benefits from reality as it is today and are willing to sacrifice the vast majority of people, including the hostages, they lost their legitimacy. They lost their legitimacy to stay in power when they look at what is going on in Gaza, when they look in the eyes of the families of hostages and they say, we don't care, they cannot be part of the game. But I do know that in order to reach this future, we will need to also compromise. We will need to get messy. We will need to work with people that we do not agree with. Maybe the person on the Israeli side that will sign the peace agreement will be a person like Rabin. Was Rabin perfect? Did he not say, let's break their knees and arms on the Palestinians in the first Intifada? He said those things. Were he not part of wars that got involved with killing innocent people? He did. I do believe we will need to compromise and see leaders that did probably bad stuff on both sides in order to be pragmatic and not only condemn reality, as some people expect us, coming back to words and terminology, not only being satisfied with saying the right things, but actually moving reality and changing it. And if we want to change it, we need to compromise, we need to work with people we don't agree with, we need to form coalitions, and this is what we're trying to do.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, although you have gained new members, as you told us, and you see a new peace movement emerging with young people, as I understood it.
Yeah.
But we do live in gloomy times, so I wonder, how do you find the strength to continue? You've done it for 10 years now.
Yeah, we get sick a lot. I'm just joking.
She has a cold.
I do, but it happens whenever I travel. It's like, I love the Middle East. Whenever you take me out of it, I become sick. Yes, home is home. I know it after, many years of being an activist. Power comes from having people with you. Whenever we wake up and we call out for people to come to a demonstration and we see hundreds and thousands coming with us, it gives me hope. Whenever something horrible happens and people call me and say, let's do something about it, it gives me hope. When there's persecution, racism towards a minority, and other people come and tell me, let's do something about it, it gives me hope again and again and again and again. And I think the biggest thing is understanding that there are many people within the society I live in that want change and demand change and see that change really forming by what they do. And this is the major thing that really gives me hope, because if after the 7th of October, people did not go out to the streets, did not demand a ceasefire or anything, I would probably pack up and leave. But it didn't happen. On the contrary, many people came out to the streets with us. Many people joined standing together. Today we are the largest grassroots movement with tens of thousands of people coming with us. So all of that gives me hope and gives me, the strength to wake up and think and do and organize and mobilize again and again and again and again and again. And I will keep on doing it until we reach a point where we can both be really home at home.
Have you stopped receiving hatred messages?
Never.
No?
No.
You still get them?
Yes, and it is amazing actually what people wish you. Well, really, they can be very, but the most painful one, it's when women wish you to be raped by other men. This is the most horrifying one.
Oh my God.
Yes, we do get, harassed a lot, but still, again, I still have the power and I still have the imagination to live in different times. Thank you.
And what about you, Alon-Lee? How do you find the strength when you... There must be days when you feel let down.
Many days. Yes, and sometimes the amount of threats can, take you down, and the amount of, new news that come and all of a sudden makes, the things much worse. That can break you. But being part of a movement also means that when you have a low day, someone else can continue. Someone else can carry you. Someone else is there with you. When you sit and see, I don't know, the amount of time I spent with Rula on the roads in Israel, in the last 16 months, moving from one Palestinian village to another Jewish city to another mixed city, sometimes 4 cities a day, organizing people, doing events, being in demonstration, and seeing Rula holding the situation, seeing you, seeing even other people cursing you, coming and trying to push you, trying to break you, but you hold strong. I look at it and I say, I can allow myself to be low for a second. I can allow myself to feel bad for a second because we're part of a movement. And she fights for me. And feeling, this feeling of being a Jewish person and know that I can completely trust a Palestinian to fight for me at this moment, to carry me. And I hope others feel the same about me in the movement. This is not only hope, but it's also power.
Yes. It's a good one. He moved me, actually. No. And I see him more than my partner. We're practically married, but without being married.
And what do you do when you want to forget about it all? What's your best way to forget?
I don't think I had a day like this since October 7th.
No?
No.
Maybe you should have one.
Yeah. My partner tells me I need to be able to throw my phone and to not be able to look at it at least a week and to heal. But I cannot. I don't know why I cannot feel that things will be okay, because I feel it won't be promised by someone else that things will be okay. Something really deep broke in us. I think it is a very basic feeling for every human being to sometimes or some moments in our life to just, lay back and feel it will be okay. And I don't know when we will get this feeling again, but it doesn't exist.
No. What about you, Rula? Do you have somewhere to escape? Another world?
No, I don't think we've had a moment since the 7th. Yeah, October the 7th. It is, one continuous nightmare from one day to another. And it feels at times, it's a huge responsibility to do what we do. But in many times, it's also a burden that we hold and we keep on holding. And until this moment, we didn't really have a break. I hope it comes soon when something really political really changes. But I do think having my family and my friends around me, it's, it is a lot of power for me.
Yeah.
But still, there was never a real break. Even when we take a break and maybe we took a vacation after 10 months, 11 months, we got sick. So it's yes.
And we have this joke that if we will really take a vacation and throw our phone to the side, the war with Iran will break and all hell will break loose. So.
Alon-Lee Green and Rula Daood, thank you so much
for
talking to us. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.